Okay, we've gone live, and I'm joined here this week by Thomas Breckel, who's the director of Clinton County Emergency Management Agency in Ohio. Hi, Thomas. Great to have you on.
Good to be here. I'm glad to be a guest.
We're going to discuss today agricultural traditions meeting modern day hazards. So, Clinton County, it's a rural EMA, and sort of the incidents are ranging from anything from could be tornado to chemical fire, but they always impact sort of the agriculture or livestock or the surrounding land, or very common. So thank you for joining us. And what we're going to do, we've got kind of people joining up now, and people are coming in. As you join the stream, I can see the numbers increasing right up here. Do remember you can ask us questions in real time. This is live. We are here, and you can ask questions to Thomas. I'm sure there'll be interesting pieces, and we normally get a great amount of interest from different regions in the world because people are facing sometimes the same type of incident or scenario, whether like with agricultural land all over the world, and they do learn new things. So please do ask questions. You can join us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. We're broadcasting live across lots of different platforms, and afterwards we'll have the video uploaded that you can watch back as well. So let's have a look here. If I bring in a map. Excellent. Okay. Let's find out where Clinton County is. So we're just going to have a spin round here. We're over in the United States. Tell me, Thomas, what is unique about this area?
Well, one of the unique things about Clinton County is that we have all these rural traditions and these rural lifestyles that are just very short distance drive away from some large metropolitan areas. So as we're located in Southwest Ohio, we're only an hour away from Cincinnati, Dayton, or Columbus. So a couple of large metropolitan areas. The nice thing about that is you have that small town living kind of feel. But we also have some of the normal problems that you would have in other areas dealing with the natural hazards. And because of our geography, we're kind of at the end of the tornado alley, if you've heard that reference before. So some of the big threats.
I think your background would suggest that.
Yes. So we got Bessie back here is getting picked up by a little twister here, a little bit of a backdrop. And so we've had our fair share of tornadoes. Luckily, knock on wood or touch wood, depending upon what your local traditions are. We haven't had a twister here in quite a while. We have had some wind events, a lot of straight line winds. We had the threat of a derecho last fall, which is a huge wind event. So if you go back to
what is that?
That's a large atmospheric condition that, while it's not tornado-like activity, does have a lot of strong directional winds come through. So I think it was October of last year that in Iowa, they actually had a derecho, and that impacted a lot of the crops that they had because the corn was near the harvest time. It snapped a lot of the stalks, and they lost a lot of the crop, including a lot of wheat also.
So the area around you were telling me, it's sort of 5% urban, 95% agricultural. And I think it's pretty obvious from this picture we're looking at now.
Yes, we have one city in terms of population, Wilmington, Ohio, and we have a couple of villages. Our second largest village, our second largest population center, is to the south and the west. That's called Blanchester. And then on our eastern border, we have Sabina, Ohio. And then we have some much smaller villages, Clarksville, New Vienna, and so forth. And they're much smaller numbers. So with a lot of space in between. Mm-hmm. Now, the weird thing is because of the rural nature, going back to the 50s and the 60s, the Air Force actually constructed an Air Force base out here as part of their strategic Air Command. Yeah. And because of that, we actually had B-52s that were capable of operating off our airstrip. Now, that airport is still used today, not as an Air Force, but it's a commercial airport. And one of the biggest clients we have out there is Amazon. So you can imagine the number of flights and stuff that's coming out each day. DHL was there before, and then the predecessor to that, of course, was Airborne Express. But we have a lot of different type of aircraft, as well as different partners that have businesses around the warehousing in the area. So you can be driving, and within a minute, less than a minute, you can go from large built-up warehouses to nothing but corn.
Yeah, and that air park, I assume there's potential impact on that land as well. So runway incidents, or what do you have to prepare for that?
Well, like for any large industrial center, you do have man-made mishaps. So you can have anything from, like you said, a transportation incident dealing with an aircraft. Because of the truck traffic coming through as well, a lot of the fuel coming in by truck, you have the potential for a transportation-related incident. Also, going to the southeast from there, it happens to be our watershed that we pull in from the area. So any type of situation dealing with hazardous materials at the airport will impact our watershed. So that's one of the areas that we have to monitor real closely. And we work with different partners on that. But if you see all that surrounding area that's around the airbase, that's agriculture. And if you know anything about modern day agriculture, a lot of times they use agricultural chemicals. We'll probably get into this a little bit later, but we have several large bulk storage sites that contain agricultural chemicals used to prep the ground, make the ground a little bit more fertile to being able to produce crops. And unfortunately, when you're looking at the chemicals in their storage sense, before you do water them down, they can be hazardous. So we have to make sure that we have good safety procedures in place in case something like that happens.
Okay, interesting. Did you have a map you wanted to show? Was that of the county?
Yes. So if I go back here, this is it's just something off of our state. We have what are called county profiles. And you can see the kind of the gold colors in the center of the oranges. Those are the population centers. When I say population centers, I don't want to say it's tongue in cheek, but Wilmington is our city and it's right there in the middle. That's our county seat. And then we have these smaller villages off to the side. I said Blanchester was our second largest, and that's at the southwest. And then we have Sabina up here, kind of the northeast. These other locations that are around are small villages. And a lot of times, going back years and years ago, they were very agricultural centric, and they still are now. We went through a little period where we started bringing in some different manufacturing and some industrial jobs. Some of those have been kind of transitory with some of the larger strategic things in the world in terms of global manufacturing and stuff, but we still have a lot of agricultural, I guess you would say, sector players in the sector. And if you look anywhere in here that's yellow, that's agriculture. That's an awful lot. So you can go through, you can see a lot of corn, you can see a lot of soybean, and then certain areas we do actually raise some hogs, and then we do have some cattle as well. Okay.
In terms of transportation, I hadn't realized you've obviously plane fuel coming through or jet fuel coming through. Well, you've is it I-71 major road through?
And because of I-71, we actually have several transportation companies here that are involved in trucking. So R&L Transfer, if you happen to be in the U.S. driving down the highway and you see a truck that has green on it that says R&L Transfer, they're headquartered here in Wilmington, Ohio. They're the 8th largest less than truckload transportation carrier in the country. So they're rather sizable. They've got locations everywhere. And we got a couple of other smaller family ones that are around here. So because of that, as well as the rail line going through, we have a lot of transportation kind of passing through and shipping through the county.
Pipelines, any fuel?
Yes, we have pipelines because we're kind of on the way to other locations. We've got quite a few pipelines kind of slicing. If you follow the 71 corridor that's on that little north to going to the west on that little northwest corner, we have probably 8 different pipelines that go through that area to haul anything from fuel, natural gas, you name it, that's heading from the north, usually heading to the south.
Yeah. Very good. I think there's a lot of I may be wrong on this, but a lot of the Canadian oil come down through that area. I think it comes down through Michigan and Must come down through to you.
We get some stuff that comes in by rail. It's called extremely
Okay.
hazardous flammable shipments, and it's up around and the Great Lakes, and they'll actually receive it there, and then they'll put it into the system.
Makes sense. I can see from the map that obviously in a rural area, the transportation network is limited. There aren't many options to drive around incidents. If you get something like a tornado come through or there's a large incident, what kind of impact does that have on supply lines, resources?
Well, funny you should mention it. This weekend, we had a little bit of a windstorm come through on Friday evening, and it really impacted the area in terms of knocking out some power and taking down a lot of power lines. Mm-hmm. We had a lot of trees that were also diseased from, we had some fungus issues a couple of years ago, and a lot of the trees have lost their strength. So, some trees that are, this big or even larger have come down, and it seemed that they knew what roads to hit to be able to start impacting some of our transportation wise. Fortunately, being a rural area, a lot of people happen to have chainsaws on their trucks, and we were able to kind of clean that up pretty quickly.
Excellent. In terms of as an EMA, can you describe how give people an idea of how big the EMA is? What physically, what does it look like, and staffing, what does it look like in a small rural EMA? I know the answers. I'm letting people understand.
All right. So if you're looking at Clinton County as an example, it's me. And then I also have Misty. She's the office manager. She's a part-timer. She does a lot of the accounting and kind of coordinating the volunteer staff. So it's just the two of us, and the entire program kind of works on us. So during normal operations, when nothing's going on, there's time to do a lot of things. But when a crisis happens, we're definitely jobbing it.
Yeah. So I assume it's all readiness, it's all preparedness, it's planning. The incident happens. You talked about bringing in volunteers. Are they already in public safety? Are they just across the county staff? Are they in other roles? Do they come from other departments?
Well, volunteers come from a lot of different organizations. So there's affiliated and non-affiliated. So anytime a disaster takes place, you always hear of some different organizations. American Red Cross is one of the better known ones. There's the Red Crescent when you're overseas. They have teams that will go out and can do different types of assistance. Then you also have the non-affiliated or your spontaneous. They see something happening on TV. They have that calling on the inside. They want to do something good. They have that chainsaw or they have that grill they want to set up and feed some people. So they just need a place that they can go to where you can, one, make sure that they have the right protective equipment and they're aware of the hazards. And the two, you can assign them an area of operations or a team to work with, and then you can put them to use. Otherwise, if you allow them to kind of go off into the communities themselves, you'll find that some communities will be overserved and other communities may not have anyone there. So this is just a better way of being able to identify what resources we have, who needs them, then try to get the volunteers matched up with them based on need.
Excellent. You must, with the sort of more formal ones, you must do some exercising to get people ready.
We do. And that kind of ties into what we have here. I'm just going to pull up my D4 HUD here.
I should say you're very good to share the screen. It's not everyone can, and it's excellent when people do, because it gives people a real sense of how others are using of similar size are using and are inspired to build out the same sort of features.
So what I've got here is based upon a tabletop exercise we had several weeks ago for our fire chiefs. We did our exercises on scene, and then we have another one that's going to be taking place this Friday, and it's going to be from an EOC level. So we're dealing with different levels of individuals. So we have our technical level of response, and then we're stepping up to our operationals level. So here I've got my demo. I'm just going to pull up a map here real quick. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in. So just so folks can kind of see, we have a community in the south of the county. And I'm just going to change the map type here real quickly, so it's a little less busy. And here in the county, we actually have a small community called Midland. And in this scenario, we had an agricultural chemical company that stored a lot of chemicals that were used in the agriculture industry. This could be anything from anhydrous ammonia. It could be different types of insecticides, but there's different types of chemicals, some that are stored in what's called a chemical warehouse, and then other that are stored in different types of storage containers, whether they're above ground, below ground, and what have you. In this scenario, we had, and you never tell them the background. You just, this is what you got the call out for.
Mm-hmm.
They had a chemical warehouse fire. So they responded out. And from here, they had to start coming up with a plan on what it is that they're going to do, shelter in place, evacuation, how they're going to fight the fire. And it was a great opportunity to get the subject matter experts from the chemical company to kind of interface with them so that they know what the hazards are. And as part of the process, we went through and actually created different checkpoints. And in these checkpoints, I actually built these as status boards. So I'm just going to click over here to our checkpoints real fast. And then as I started putting those in, we color coded them so you can see the difference between manned and unmanned, just at a glimpse. Mm-hmm. And when you go inside the checklist we just created as a status board, I put it, whether it's the Ohio State Highway Patrol that was doing it, if it was a highway department, like if they dropped a sign, if it was local law enforcement, if it was an area. We also have a state park called Cowan Lake. So we have the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. They have law enforcement, as well as the Ohio Department of Transportation. So we just essentially identified what it was or who owns the checkpoint. And then we can see what colors they were. And then that way, when we went to the map and we're looking around and we see all these checkpoints, and we just got the little symbol that has the X, so we know it's a checkpoint, we're able to see which ones are manned and which ones are not manned. That way, if there's a shift because of the winds, or if we see a forecasted shift, we'll know which one of these checkpoints we'll need to move out and which ones we'll need to relocate, dealing with the manned ones first, and then which ones we'll have to coordinate with some other sectors. So this is real handy for this.
Could you cover for people, how are you making them amber or green? Well, what was the drop down doing that?
So if I went down to the checkpoints themselves, all it was is just identifying about whether it was manned or unmanned. Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
And that was just a quick way of being able to identify that. Now, when we set up this agreement with you guys at D4H, we got our package. We have so many licenses, and we wanted to give everyone and their grandma, their dog, everyone licenses, but we only had so many licenses. So one of the neat things that we did or utilized is when we went to the incident situation and you start putting this information in, this is the basic components or pieces of the actual incident that is important to make decisions, to make notifications, to write press releases from, and so forth. So what we have done is we've leveraged that public link. And that public link allows us to be able to share this as a PDF so that anytime we do an update, for instance, if someone places a update such as Porta toilets arrived at staging area, and then I hit that, once that person refreshes that screen, they'll be able to see what that actual link says. So I'm just going to copy this link real fast. I'm just going to show you what it looks like. This way, our elected officials can be able to scroll through and they can see the incident information. They can see who the incident commander is, where the incident took place, what the commander's intent is, safe route, which is very important when you have responders coming from different fire districts. What area is safe to go through, especially if there's a downwind plume. If the EOC is activated, what level of activation, what fire districts are involved, what agencies, and what other agencies are helping out. We can see what the current EOC operations are, and we can see which one of those ESF positions are filled out, as well as additional partners that we have in there. So in this scenario, we had a village that was impacted with a chemical fire, so there's going to be an evacuation. And we had to have Red Cross in there. We know people have pets and stuff. And of course, I like pets better than I like most people. So I need to make sure we're taking care of the pets. And we have this information on there so that people can be able to see and make decisions. And they can see, okay, estimated population impact, 307 people. How many different households? So now for planning purposes for our shelters, we know what we're going to plan for. Now, in our counties, because we're rural, we're going to find that most people have relatives in the county, and
Mhm.
will go to those people to stay with them and support them. Then they will go to a shelter. But still, we want to make sure that we put that information up there so we can track that. We have how many
So,
people we've currently evacuated. Go ahead.
this form we're looking at, just because I know some people are listening to this on audio only on our podcast. What you've done here is you've taken your incident situation report and you've created a shared link to it from within the software, and then you can give that URL to anybody. It's a shared but secret URL, and anybody can open this on their smartphone, on their tablet, on their laptop, and they can see a live view of the incident sitrep if they've permission to do so, and they can see, like you're scrolling through here, all of the log updates as chronological log as you went.
Now, unfortunately, it doesn't allow you to share mapping. So what we'll do is we'll just do a snapshot,
It's a nice
export it,
workaround.
and just post it up there. And then as long as the person is hitting refresh, they're able to see the most up-to-date information, and everyone is seeing the same information the same way. So hopefully we're all operating within a common site picture. So that's common operating picture.
Talk to me about mapping and then shared mapping. What would be useful? It's being able to share a link to your map in the same way, select the layers.
Well, I think if you've got a license, that is awesome for people to be able to access mapping and see that, because when you're doing a lot of the forms, it's very helpful to be able to click the location where you need something delivered or something's going to be used in. On the app, I think having some degree of visibility of mapping would be very helpful also, because if you're using an iPad or a portable device, that's going to be something that's important. However, I'm kind of okay with this link for the other people that you don't want to have full access. I don't want to say you want to control what they have access to, but you definitely want to control what they don't have access to.
Yes.
And that's very helpful.
Okay, brilliant. There's a question in here just while we're on these from Dale Rowley. Dale actually is in a more rural EMA than you. I've visited, and I lost cell phone signal about 2 towns away. Dale will laugh at that, but Dale, Thomas covered earlier. It's him and one other in the EMA, and so very similar to yourself. And I think actually the two of you would get on very well. We should do an introduction.
Our cell service, surprisingly enough, is getting better. We used to be kind of like what you mentioned with Dale. We had some areas that were definitely some dark spots, but because of an agreement that AT&T has signed, I believe, with the state of Ohio or nationwide, with what's called FirstNet, they are actually obligated to expand their services. And what FirstNet is, it's a cellular service that's on a different bandwidth that is just for first responders, fire, EMS, law enforcement, emergency management. And you can have one bar on AT&T and not be able to make a call, but you can have one bar on FirstNet, and it's like you've got the entire network yourself because there's less traffic.
I think they're sharing. It doesn't matter what it doesn't matter which provider you're on. So whether you're Verizon or AT&T or whatever, I believe it's sharing the signal across them. It's a nice, FirstNet is nice for sure. Okay, brilliant. And Dale says here, we have a follow-up testing out FirstNet this month. So there we go.
Just a pro tip, and I'm not here to promote FirstNet, but just information up front. We had some areas.
Look, this is very useful for other rural EMAs. So that's why we're here. Promote away.
We had areas that we were concerned about the reception. We would say that we think the reception or the signal strength is low in an area. They would come back and show us a color map showing what their engineers would calculate it to be. Our sheriff's department actually got 2 different units from FirstNet, and it goes on the roof of the car, and they're driving around for a couple of months. And all they're doing is testing Verizon signal strength and FirstNet signal strength as they're going through the routes, and they're able to average it and find out which one is the better, which one gives them the better coverage, and then identify what areas by GPS they need to make improvements on. So if there's an area that's a concern like that, you might ask them if they have that type of capability so you can determine if that's a good solution for you.
Brilliant. Sorry, back to your exercise. So we've covered so far. I'm going to summarize where we're at. We've declared an incident. In terms of we've written a sit rep. We've got all the information out there, and we're now looking out at where the plume is. So you've uploaded the plume, and I know we're looking for at the moment. You've sent me through the raw file for the plume model, the KML file, and some other pieces, and we're going to look at how we can improve that for you. But you've done a great job here of overlaying it on from a screenshot. You've then built a checkpoints board, and there's lots of people liking this checkpoint board for sure. And we're now tracking. We can see if it's manned or not. And you're able to move the checkpoints out if the plume changed direction, if the wind changed.
Correct. So if, just as an example, if I went down to a checkpoint and let's just say for whatever reason, this one had to evacuate, I can make this unmanned, not in place. Now it's red. And when I go back, I know, I've got a problem. And on my map, I'm able to see that this checkpoint right here on State Route 28 is not in place. Now, that may or may not be a bad idea because I've got right here, I've got a unmanned checkpoint, but if the wind does shift, you can see where that would be kind of a concern.
Absolutely. What other boards do you use or did you use? I mean, I think you described this incident as it's a hazmat chemical incident. So you've got this plume is being released. There's, for people not familiar with that, that's particles dropping out of the air, possibly on that path, along with toxic fumes. What else are you doing to manage it?
So if I can kind of answer that two different ways. The first one, what else am I doing with D4H in terms of different boards? Off to the side, you can see I have EHS facilities. I don't think I've got this one imported here, so I'm just going to click on it. Okay, good. So I'm also part of what's called the Local Emergency Preparedness Committee. And we deal with hazardous materials facilities. We do tier 2 reports where they send information to us every year, who the emergency contracts are, and if they also have any type of extremely hazardous substances. What I have built is a location of all the EHS locations in our county. And I'm just going to go back to my map and I'm just going to zoom out here for a moment. So let's say we had a tornado come through this area. And let's just say I'm going to grab this and I'm going to say, okay, the tornado kind of went along that map right there, that route. And let's say I go ahead and make this a pretty pink, so it's going to kind of stand out. If I were to go through and start turning on my communications infrastructure, that contains where all my cell towers in the county are located, my Marks radio towers. If I turn on the EHS facilities, if I turn on, and I don't think this would be a problem, I'm going to turn on my cemeteries as an example. Where's my history? Oh, here we go. These are historic sites that I have in the county, and I may not have imported them for this scenario.
You might need to, you can manually do it if you're happy to.
All right, so I'll go here to in here, and I'm going to hit this, and then
beside the add button, the little down arrow.
Go down. There we go.
That's the one.
All right, so if I hit all of these, and scroll down here, and what I've done is I've imported all the different historical sites and cemeteries that there are in my county. So imagine if I had a lot of information on this map: cell towers, extremely hazardous facilities, junction, key pieces of infrastructure. And when I zoom in, anything I see that's kind of close to this, I can say, hey, if I go on Sabin Cemetery as an example, I can see who the owner is George Arledge, is the trustee, the township, and I don't have his phone number imported in here, but I could just give George a call and say, hey, George, you may want to go out there and check the place for damage. So imagine that for everything, for cell towers. Imagine that for public facilities. So it's just a way of being able to pre-identify where to focus your damage assessment teams as you're doing your post-storm damage assessment to identify where there may be, the biggest pieces of or parts of damage.
I'm just thinking in my head here, would it be useful for you to be able to create a buffer off that line, as in draw a line here, but mark the map half a mile either side of it?
That would be great, because if you had a large tornado, you could have cast off or debris that's going off to either side. So it kind of gives you, I guess you would say, an error probability, or
I'm just thinking you could have a buffer. I mean, it might be 100 yards, but that it would mark up better.
Mm-hmm. But this is just a way that we can reach out to other people. They can do their damage assessment, and then they can contact us. And then on top of this, we have an emergency notification system that we use. It's like reverse 911 for the individual. If there's an emergency, if they need law enforcement, or if there's a fire, or they need medical attention, they'll dial 911, or in other countries, it may be like 999. What this allows us to do is to reverse that to where we're calling everyone. And we've created lists where I can send out a notification to all these extremely hazardous substance facilities saying, our county has just had a severe storm. Your facility may have been impacted. Please check it within the next 60 minutes and call us back at the EOC. And here's the phone number. And then we have this little board that we created that as they call in, we will click impacted, not impacted, damaged, destroyed, whatever. And then we can see as the board is greening up, hey, we're looking good, not a lot of damage. But if we start seeing some oranges and reds, we may want to start looking at the possibility of maybe some hazardous materials being released also. So it just kind of helps with the whole post-storm and post-damage assessment.
Yeah, definitely. Are you, if you get a damage assessment report coming in, are you logging them? I see you've got a damage assessment board. And I should explain for people not familiar with D4H, all the boards on the left, Thomas has built. So we obviously will give a hand at the start and give some inspiration, but I've never seen historical sites before. It's a great idea. And so you can build out these boards and layers and everything yourself and configure up all of the templates as you want to adapt it. Now, damage assessments, I'm guessing if you get a report of something in, you're adding it here. Is that what happens?
Well, we'll start noting some of this stuff in there, but there's another solution that we use for damage assessment called Orion. And that allows us to download everything onto a smartphone, and it ties in with our auditor's tax information and stuff. So that's what we use. But for some of the big ticket items, we'll start tracking that at least within the county level on there. So that way we can kind of keep our stuff clear from their stuff. And I've gone through and I've included like the area hospitals on here so we can see who's actually directing patients to other places. We've got hotels on here also. So if we have to start putting people up in hotels, we know who's got what rooms and so forth. So we really started looking at how can we build this out? And the way we kind of determine how we want this to be shaped up is based on exercises. We go through and we do a tabletop. And then as we're doing the tabletop, I go through and I start putting this stuff in there going, hey, we really need to do this, or wouldn't it be neat if we had this? And that's where I'm kind of tinkering off to the side. And this is where I'm really liking this.
Yeah, excellent. Even that Orion piece, I'd love to get an integration to that done. It would be brilliant if we can just show that on the map. I mean, that's what it wouldn't be a board, but we could pull all that data in for you and get it on that map. What else are you using here? Do you set up checklists or task boards of any type?
That's the one area that I am starting to kind of grow into. And I haven't really created a whole lot. I've got a couple. So I'm going to do like a recall checklist and an EOC and a shift change checklist. So when I pull those in, each section will pop it in and they'll have them assigned to individuals. And it's like, okay, if the EOC has been activated, notify the EMA director. And it's just simply going through, just checking, which items have been taking place, which items are completed. And what this feeds into is, I really didn't mention this, and then this is the dashboard area. This is the one piece that I've got to spend a little bit more time on, to where when you walk into an EOC and you look up on the wall and you see all this information that is put up there, in like a snapshot, kind of like when you're driving, you got your dashboard telling you how fast you're going, how much fuel and so forth. Is you've got this dashboard, and we're looking through and we're trying to build out, okay, we want to show a little bit of the map so people get an idea of spatially of where things are. And then some other key pieces of information. So it's just kind of, we haven't got to this part yet. We have an EOC exercise this Friday. So hopefully on Friday, I'll be able to kind of tool with this a little bit to get it to where we can have it projected up on the screen. And as we're going through the same scenario that our fire chiefs have went through last month, we're just now at the next level up, taking all their inputs, all their requests, working the shelter piece and everything else. And now we're executing that. And it's just, I'm looking at how to do this in layers. So what I started with was, what do we need to do for all the stuff for on scene? And this has been very helpful and very useful. I mean, I can just have a laptop off to the side and it's real easy to work with.
Brilliant. We can certainly help you with, see, like that checkpoints piece. You can, on the dashboard, you can configure that widget so you could have 5 of them, 5 are manned, 10 are unmanned or not in place. You know, it's possible to configure all those numbers.
And Maureen's been really great. I bugged the crazies out of her the first week, I think it was, trying to get it going. And then I got just enough information to be kind of dangerous. One of the things I'm working on right now is I'm actually putting together a little training plan to where I'm going to give the training. I'm going to go through the process of acting like I'm giving the training to my EOC folks, but it's going to be to Marie. And at any point in time, she can hit the BS bell and go, nope, you got something wrong. And that way we can make sure we got our EOC people properly trained up on how to use the system.
She said to me, she'll only do it if you share the cow background with her.
Not a problem.
She'd like to use that on her calls. Is there anything else in here you'd like to show? You've been very generous so far.
Let's see. The next area I'm going to build up is called Rapid Assessment Form. This is something that we have to do for the state of Ohio. Anytime we do an EOC activation and there's anything that we need to make the state aware of, it's just a way of being able to do a form. And I've taken the basic format and created a form here to where I can put in the basic pieces of information. And once again, this is all just based on the exercise. A lot of this automatically pulls in from the situation. So I've got it to where I'm not having to retype, overtype, and keep typing and then have to worry about, well, I didn't update this. I got to go back and update something else. You update one thing, it updates multiple things in other places. And then when I'm ready, all I have to do is come up here and I can hit print to PDF and Shazam. Now I've got my PDF right here. I can download it. I can print it. I can email it as an attachment, and it just makes my life a whole heck of a lot easier.
We've seen people create, let's call them subsections of the sitrep of the situation with limited information. So the situation's their master copy, and then they'll create a form called, say, I don't know, a town briefing or, department brief, whatever it is, a subset of it. And then they'll every time they want to issue a briefing, they'll create a new form and it will pull down and link through a subsection of the fields from the situation, just the restricted information. And that's what they share the link to, or the PDF then. And so then they have a snapshot of every time they've created a briefing. It works very well for them.
And then, of course, you've got all the ICS forms that are automatically in there. And then I've started going through actually building a couple of unique forms here. So that way, if someone wants to order a generator, there's a form that they fill out and it goes part of our workflow through here, the rapid assessment and so forth. So it's one of those things where as you start getting into it, you start getting new ideas and it can run away from you, because normally you have your plan that is written first, and then you designed all those forms. And you do that in PowerPoint or Word, and it isn't the most useful thing at all. And you get all frustrated. And then you come over here, and then you start knocking forms out left and right. And before you know it, you've got forms created in D4H that you don't have in your EOP. And you're like, now I've got to export this and put it back in there. It's been very helpful and very user-friendly.
Good. Well, that's fantastic. I really, really appreciate you showing that. I believe I check if there's any more questions over the next minute or two. I think Thomas will gladly answer any questions about their EMA, about the types of incidents that they have, and how they use D4H. I'm glad to take them. I can see we've had a great viewership across all the different platforms at this point. It's been a good episode of this. I was going to sort of wrap up back onto that agricultural topic again. When you're talking about modern day hazards meeting agriculture, that's I assume that's chemical related, is it, or is it industrial, or is it? I mean, it's transportation. What are those pieces?
It would be D, all the above. So when we're talking about the agricultural side, we have some farms that have been in families that have been handed down since 1801. Now, I know to you guys over in Europe, that's not a long time, but for us, that's been an extremely long time. So you'll have one farm that is still being, an old tractor that they're using to plow and plant. Go across the road there, you've got another large farm where they have GPS guided tractors and everything else. So we have different levels of technology, but the hazards, whatever gets shipped over the highways, whatever gets shipped over by rail. We had a rail derailment. We had a bridge that failed back in 2001. I think it was way before I got here. I've only been here since April 2019. And when that bridge went down, the rail line went down. So that was a huge response. And that was right next to one of our large transportation corridors. And that impacted a lot of folks. Plus, it threw chemicals into a waterway that, of course, was flowing into Lake Cowan. So now we're impacting a state park. So that was a huge response right there. But the type of hazards that we have is modern. A lot of things that we use today now requires electricity. So when you take the electricity away, everyone feels like they're back in 40, whatever, before there was electricity, kind of like when they had the Carrington effect with the CMA. Anything that we use to manufacture things today tend to be very hazardous and non-healthy. So if you have a major accident involving those, you've got some problems. We have people on the highways with these beautiful electric cars, but every time there's a car incident involving an electrical car, that's a hazardous materials response, because that's a big battery that now you've got material all on the roadway. And of course, to make all this stuff go, you need gasoline. So whether it's a pipeline or it's being shipped by truck, we just have all these different things that have to go right on a daily basis for nothing to happen. And we have flying cow problems too from time to time. Fortunately, not recently. So, but it's one of those things to where everything has to go perfectly on a daily basis. Otherwise, it is going to impact someone. And the worst thing we want to do is have loss of life.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's brilliant. Thank you very much again. I can see that lots of appreciation coming in and how good you were communicating what you do. And we'll be very glad to get this recording out for anyone who's missed it. I know there's a very interested group of quite rural EMAs in New Zealand who use D4H. And I think it's 4 a.m. there, something like that. So they'll be watching the recording. So Thomas, thank you again. Appreciate it. We'll end it here.
My pleasure. You all take care and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. Talk to you again soon.
Cheers.